Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and specifically welcome back to the mailbag segment where you ask me questions using the link in my caption and I answer them. This can be personal or professional, so you can feel free to ask questions about body neutrality and body image work. You can also feel free to ask me questions about me. And today I will be answering a question that came through Instagram, and it is to tell you a little bit more about my gender journey, personally. So, um, this is such a big topic, and I could honestly talk about this forever. And it's ever evolving, so I feel like this will be one of those videos on the internet that'll be relevant for like 6 months, and then I'm gonna be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I ever said that on the internet. That doesn't apply anymore. I completely changed my mind. So bear with me, this stuff is ever evolving. Both because I'm ever evolving, as we all are, and also because our understanding, our concepts, and our language around gender are like really rapidly evolving at this point, culturally. So, how I identify. At this point, I identify as non-binary, and personally that word feels a little distancing, so when I connect to it myself, I think the words genderqueer and gender fluid both feel the most resonant and warm and cozy for me. I was born assigned female at birth. You know, I was conditioned, raised as a little girl. I'm still very femme presenting, which means that I am cis passing. So a lot of people think I identify still now as the gender that I was assigned at birth, which I do not. But understandable, you know, because again, our concepts around this stuff, they're only really recently becoming a topic of exploration and curiosity and compassion and open-mindedness. So like, I didn't even know I was allowed to identify differently than the gender I was assigned at birth until a couple of years ago. Because like most of us, I kind of was like, well, I feel like I suck at being a girl or a woman. Like that doesn't feel appropriate, but I'm certainly not a man. And so I guess I just am bad at what I was assigned, and that's my only option. But now we have a lot of concepts and language to affirm, first and foremost, the fact that gender is a spectrum, not a binary, and also just that gender is a construct. It is entirely something that is invented so that we can try to understand people better, but actually it leads to a lot of misunderstandings of people. And so gender is something that you get to decide. It's part of your identity. It's not, has nothing to do with the genitals that you have, has nothing to do with how you look or how you present. What it has to do with is how you feel, and also certain things that are kind of complicated to talk about, such as how you want to engage with the world. And those are still based on a lot of binary thinking, so it's really complicated to unpack. For example, the question of like, would I still feel like I had to claim a different gender if I grew up in a world that was truly gender neutral? If like men and women, there was no significance attached to those words, those didn't have binary roles associated with them, binary values, binary all kinds of stuff, limitations and stereotypes, would I have ever been like, oh, I'm bad at mine, let me re-examine this, actually I don't want either of these words, I'm non-binary? The answer is like, probably not, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily true for everybody who explores gender the way that I have, but I can say like, if it were truly a gender neutral world in which we didn't use pronouns because they weren't part of our language, and we didn't have any association with men or women, like, I probably wouldn't have needed to examine it. So in my understanding, a lot of my non-binary label, a lot of my pushback towards, or away from, I should say, the gender binary, it is just that. It's pushback. And I believe that the gender knots, you know, the like incredible, the people who really put themselves out there first, the transgender people who pushed this conversation forward during eras that it was absolutely unacceptable and that put them in harm's way, like they are who has led to this incredible liberatory time with regard to gender. And I'm just so lucky to be able to, you know, to join at this point, to take advantage and say, yeah, like this system sucks. I don't want it. I don't like it. I don't resonate with it. So all of that is to say, that this stuff is ever evolving, and in part because even to imagine concepts outside of the concepts we've been given from a gender binary is really complicated, like just take for example, if you've never thought about this stuff before, what it means for you in a sexual relationship, gender, what it means your gender in a sexual relationship. Does it have a specific role? Does it have specific expectations? Does it have specific stereotypes? And how accurate are all of those to you? And in what ways are they inaccurate? And in what ways do they cause problems because other people think they're accurate and they're not? And in what ways does it cause problems because you expect your partner to show up a certain way based on their gender and they either do or they don't? Like these are things where you're like, oh God, I never even thought about gender and how it interacts with everything until I started thinking about how gender interacts with everything. And all of a sudden the answer is like, yeah, it's intense. And so for me, I would say a couple years ago, I was able to say I was gender queer, maybe gender fluid. I knew that as the language evolved, I was gonna go with it. I've always known that I didn't feel like a girl or a woman. But I also was really afraid of how that would show up in my business, because I had, for a long time, my focus had been women. I was working with like women's empowerment was sort of my niche. And the thing about that is it still sort of is, because obviously body image affects more women than men, but it also, as we now know, it affects everybody of all genders, right? So like I was coming at it from a binary place of like, oh, there are two genders and women have more body image issues than men, but now it's totally different. So I've really changed how I view that in my work. And I worried for a while that me coming out as genderqueer or gender fluid would push people away and make women feel less comfortable with me, but I've gotten over that because I think the culture has gone there. I think the culture is ready for it now. So I'm allowed to be whatever I want, and I tell you about it. I did just sort of come out to my mom and my dad. I don't think they get it. And I don't know that they care too much. So it wasn't a whole big traumatic thing. It was just more like, hey, I don't identify this way. Here's the language I'd like to be used a little bit more, if that's okay. And I would invite curiosity, and if you want to talk to me about it, great. And the closest people in my life know all about it, and they will throw in different pronoun usages and descriptors that require gender. What's frustrating is we're at a place where there's actually no language for a lot of things. So for example, like I am my brother's sibling, and my brother has children. So who are those children to me? They are my niece and nephew, right? There is no gender neutral word for niece and nephew that is widely accepted. I've started calling them my nibblings, because like siblings, nibblings, it's just a great little word. It's adorable. They're adorable. It's perfect. But what am I to them? There isn't a word. They call me Aunt Jessi. I can't stop them. They don't want to call me Jessi. I don't know what to do about it, Like there aren't answers for so many of these questions. So when people come to me and they're like, but what about, I'm like, I know. This conversation, it's complicated. This gender thing is hard. And thank goodness it's evolving. Because it means that in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, we'll have a lot of answers that right now I just don't have. Because our culture will come to them together. We will eventually have non-binary language for your parent's sibling, like we will eventually solve these problems one by one. But for right now, we're in the middle of just like, oh my God, realizing how much gender has to do with every single aspect of life. And personally, when I think about things like, well, I'm also bisexual. When I think about like the role that I want to play in gender in relationships or in sex, it goes both ways, right? Like I like to be bigger than someone and sort of hold them in my lap. I like to be smaller than someone and sit in their lap. I can be big spoon, I can be little spoon, right? Like I can experience the joys that come from masculine qualities and like stepping in for my partner and really showing up and being their sort of like knight in shining armor in that way. And I can also enjoy being damsel in distress and being like, help, and someone comes and takes care of me. So all of these like stereotype things that have a gender associated with them, roles and expectations and all that stuff, like I've always been someone who's really fluid and can go and enjoy and feel really comfortable in both. And when I feel the least seen is when I'm pigeonholed in one, because that's typically how people see me according to my gender assigned at birth, which is why I'm bothering go through this whole damn fight to say like it's not who I am. I know it's what I look like, but it's not who I am. So yeah, so non-binary is the umbrella term, and within that holds what I currently understand myself to be, which is gender fluid or gender queer. I feel that there are times where I feel like a boy, and there are times where I feel like a girl. Or I would say there are times where I feel like a woman. And I don't know if there's times that I feel like a man exactly, but there's definitely like there's a very he sense of myself at times. And that's it. I mean, like I have no idea where this is going. I wish I could tell you, but I have no idea. And I look forward to finding out, because it's been nothing but liberation. Like, to do this work and to ask these questions is nothing but liberation work to me. So, for example, if you're cisgender, if you've never thought about this stuff before, I encourage you to ask, how did you know that you, if you're a woman, are a woman? How did you know what gender you were? And most likely, if you're cisgender, the answer is like you never thought about it, because nobody ever gave you a choice, because it was always really, really linear. It was like, you are a boy because you have a penis, and you are a girl and you have a vagina. And all of that stuff like keeps us from being interested in who we are and what these definitions mean, because we are not presented with an option to think outside of any box. So I would just say, think outside that box. Be curious. How do you know now that you are your gender? How do you express your gender to the rest of the world? Why is it important that they know what this gender is? What are you hoping they understand about you by understanding your gender? How are you expecting them or hoping that they will treat you based on this gender? Like, these are just questions to ask. And honestly, it's so interesting and super liberating to start thinking about gender through that lens of curiosity, even if you identify with the gender that was assigned to you at birth. For me, I didn't, and I love this kind of conversation. It's just super, super liberating and interesting, and like just brings us all closer to our truth, I think. So that is my gender journey. I could go on and on and on and on about how much it used to hurt without language, but I think I'm just going to keep it positive here today and say, once I found the language, I felt immense relief. And that is why I am non-binary. I do use all pronouns as of right now. I'm not particularly attached to this, and I don't really care what you use, but I will say that I go by he, they, and she, and there's no, that I know of, there's no like way to eloquently say all three of these are fine. If you call me she, that's totally okay. The close people in my life will interchange them, because that is what I've asked them to do, to affirm me. So do whatever you want. Again, I'm not attached to it, but if you're curious, those are the pronouns that I use. And yeah, thank you for being here. And I am happy to answer any questions. So go to the link in my caption and leave me questions. You can ask anything about my work. You can also ask anything about me personally or my life. And I will be answering questions every week. Catch you next time.